That specific brand of insomnia. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about the, you know, I drank a double espresso at 8 p.m. kind.
Right.
I mean, the kind where it's 3 a.m., the house is dead silent, and your brain just decides to run a highlight reel of the last 10 years.
Oh, I know the one. It's the director's cut of every single mistake you've ever made.
Exactly. And the soundtrack to that whole movie is just two words playing on a loop. If only.
The universal anthem of regret. It's a brutal headspace to be in.
It is. And usually when we talk about regret, whether it's in therapy or just, with friends, we tend to obsess over the things we did,
Yeah.
the actions we took.
I shouldn't have sent that text.
Right. I shouldn't have quit that job. I shouldn't have bought that car. We look at our active mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But today's deep dive is going to flip that narrative completely on its head. We're looking at a stack of research and analysis that suggests our most catastrophic regrets.
The really deep ones.
Yeah, the ones that really define us, they actually come from what we failed to do. Specifically, the choices we failed to make because we were essentially sleepwalking.
It's a really compelling angle. We're basically stripping away the idea that bad things just happen to us, and instead we're looking at the mechanics of why they happen.
The failure of the intellectual mechanism itself.
Exactly. And what makes this deep dive so unique is the source material. We aren't looking at a modern psychology textbook today.
Yeah.
We are anchoring this entire exploration in a single sentence from an ancient text.
Right. We are analyzing verse 10 from Surah Al-Mulk. Now, for full context, this is a religious text, but the analysis we have in front of us treats this verse almost like a piece of source code.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It dissects it through a philosophical and psychological lens, treating the verse as an algorithm for wisdom.
And conversely, an algorithm for avoiding disaster. The mission here isn't to preach. It's to unpack the human psychology that's just embedded in this one sentence. We're going to look at the massive gap between hearing and listening, the modern crisis of information overload, which the source argues is actually a crisis of processing.
And then finally, a concept the source calls radical personal responsibility.
Right.
So let's get the data on the table. The verse describes a group of people facing the ultimate regret, a catastrophic end, described as the blaze. And their confession, their own post-mortem on their lives, is this: if we had listened or used our intellect, we would not have been among the companions of the blaze.
It sounds deceptively simple on the first read. If we had listened, you might just gloss over it.
Totally.
But the source material breaks this down into a binary system that is absolutely fascinating. It distinguishes between two biological processes that we often treat as synonyms: passive hearing and active listening.
And I think most people assume they're the same thing. If sound enters my ears, I'm listening. If I'm in the room while you're talking, I'm listening.
And that's the first trap. That's where the error begins. Passive hearing is just physics. It's sound waves hitting your eardrum.
Right.
If you have functioning ears, you cannot stop it. It's involuntary. The world is noisy. Your ears pick it up. But the text uses a specific term for listening that implies a prepared mind.
Okay, a prepared mind.
It's about having the intent to receive, decode, and actually understand.
The source uses a workplace scenario to illustrate this, and honestly it made me cringe because I've absolutely been this person.
Oh, the meeting scenario.
Yeah. Scenario A, you are physically in the chair, the coffee is cold, the boss is talking about Q3 projections, but mentally, you are gone.
Completely checked out.
You're drafting a grocery list, or you're replaying conversation from yesterday, or scrolling through emails under the table. You hear the voice. It's just acoustic background noise.
Mm-hmm. You know someone is speaking. You can hear the tone, but the content, zero.
Right. You're present in body, absent in mind.
Compare that to scenario B. You are actively engaging to extract instructions because you know you have to execute them later. Your job might depend on it.
Right.
The source points out the danger of what it calls selective deafness. Let's say a colleague mentions, just in passing, a minor risk regarding a project. Hey, the server load looks a little high on the legacy system.
You hear the words, the physics happened, the sound waves hit your eardrum.
But you don't listen. You don't latch onto the data. You don't let it penetrate that cognitive barrier.
And then 2 weeks later, the server crashes, the legacy system implodes, the client is screaming, and you're sitting in the debrief saying, well, nobody told me. How was I supposed to know?
But that's the aha moment of regret. You realize, actually, he did tell me. The data was transmitted. The warning was right there in the air.
You just treated it like background music.
Exactly.
That distinction is terrifying because it implies we are missing critical warnings all the time. It's not that the world isn't telling us things.
It's that our receivers are turned off. We are. And the source argues that in the modern world, this is becoming an epidemic. Think about your daily environment.
Oh, yeah.
We are drowning in noise. Notifications, 24-hour news cycles, opinions, podcasts, advertisements.
Okay, wait a minute. Podcasts are essential listening.
Well, this isn't noise, this is signal, we hope.
Mm.
But the point stands.
Right.
The challenge for the modern human isn't finding information. For most of human history, that was the hard part. Yet now, we have too much. The challenge is filtering.
The signal-to-noise ratio.
Precisely. It's identifying which voice actually requires that active, prepared mind listening. And if you treat everything as noise, you miss the signal that saves you.
But this is where the analysis gets really technical, and I think this is the key insight of the whole thing. The verse doesn't just say, if we had listened, it adds a second condition. It says, if we had listened or are used our intellect.
That or are is the pivot point. The source breaks this down using a really rigorous computer analogy that I think clarifies why listening alone isn't enough.
Okay.
It compares listening to data entry.
Okay, let's unpack that. I love a good analogy. So hearing or listening is just typing on the keyboard.
Essentially, yes. Listening is the input phase. You're feeding raw data into the system. You read the book, you hear the warning, you watch the news, you listen to your partner. That's all input.
Okay.
But, and this is the crucial part, if you type data into a computer and then just leave it there, what happens?
Nothing. It just sits there. It doesn't do anything.
Right. You need the CPU. You need the processor to run the code, to organize the data, to make calculations. That is what the text means by using intellect.
So thinking is the processing phase.
Precisely. Processing is where you analyze the input. You filter right from wrong. You spot the dangers. You cross-reference this new piece of data with what you already know. The source argues that this processing step is where information transforms into wisdom. Without the processor, you're just a hard drive full of junk files.
This really highlights why we feel so burnt out by the internet. The source calls it the social media trap.
It's a perfect example of a broken system. Think about our consumption habits. We have massive input.
Unbelievable amount.
We scroll through thousands of posts, videos, headlines every single day. High-speed data entry. Scroll, input, scroll, input.
An infinite feed. But the question is, how much processing are we actually doing?
Almost zero. And that's the danger. We see a headline, maybe feel a micro-emotion, anger, amusement, shock, and then swipe. Next. We don't verify the source.
Nope.
We don't analyze the logic.
No.
We don't reflect on how it applies to our lives. We don't ask, is this true? Does this contradict what I learned yesterday?
So we are bypassing the CPU entirely. We're just filling the hard drive.
We are running on raw input. The source argues this is a modern, digital version of the failure described in the verse. We're failing to use our intellect on the things we hear.
We have data, but no insight.
We have facts, but no wisdom.
That's actually a little terrifying when you put it that way. We are drowning in input, but starving for wisdom because we've stopped processing. We've outsourced the thinking part to the algorithm. Or we just skip it because thinking is hard work.
Thinking is hard work.
Yeah.
It burns calories, it takes time. But the alternative is a shallow existence. You become reactive instead of proactive. You're just a leaf blowing in the wind of whatever input you consumed last.
And that leads us directly to the next major theme, which is maybe the most uncomfortable part of this analysis.
It is. The source calls it radical personal responsibility.
This part stood out to me because of what is missing from the text. When these people in the Varvagers are facing their regret, remember, they are facing the blaze, the ultimate disaster, they make a confession. But the source points out they don't play the blame game.
It's a stunning observation. Look at human nature. Look at how we operate today. When we fail, when something goes wrong, what is the very first thing we do?
We look for a scapegoat immediately. It's a reflex. I was late because of traffic. I failed the test because the teacher hates me. I didn't get the promotion because the boss plays favorites.
I yelled because you provoked me.
Exactly. We externalize the blame to protect our ego. Psychologists call it the self-serving bias. If I succeed, it's because I'm great. If I fail, it's because the world is against me. It's a defense mechanism. It wasn't me, it was the circumstance.
Right.
But in this text, at the moment of ultimate clarity, all those defenses are stripped away. Note what they do not say. They don't blame God. They don't blame the people who misled them. They don't blame their environment or their upbringing.
They say we.
We did not listen. We did not think.
That is heavy. It's complete ownership. But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Oh.
Isn't that harsh? What if they were misled? What if someone lied to them? Don't the liars share the blame?
That's the hard pill to swallow. The source argues that, yes, the deceivers have their own burden, but that doesn't absolve you.
Even if you were misled, if you had the capacity to listen and the capacity to think, and you chose not to verify the information,
Yeah.
the responsibility still lands on you.
Because you didn't turn on the processor. You let the bad input in without checking it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If someone sells you a scam, yes, they are a scammer. But if you bought it without doing due diligence, without asking questions, without using your intellect, you are complicit in your own loss. The text highlights that they possessed the machinery. They had ears, they had a brain. The failure wasn't a lack of ability, it was a choice not to use it.
And that acknowledgement that I could have done differently is what makes the regret so painful.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. If you can blame someone else, if you can say, it wasn't my fault, I was tricked, then you can be angry, you can be resentful, you can feel self-righteous.
Sure.
But you don't have to feel deep, crushing regret. Regret comes from the realization that you are the architect of your own outcome.
This connects directly to a psychological term the source brought up, counterfactual thinking. I'd never heard this term before, but as soon as I read the definition, I knew the feeling.
It's a staple in the psychology of regret. Counterfactual thinking is essentially thinking against the facts.
Okay.
It's looking at reality as it is and imagining a contrary possibility. If I had done X, then Y would have happened.
Like the example of the car accident survivor. They don't think the other driver was crazy. They think if I had just left the house 10 seconds earlier.
I wouldn't have been at that intersection.
Right.
And that if-only mindset is the fuel for the fire. It hurts because it acknowledges that a better outcome was possible. It wasn't inevitable. It was contingent on your choices.
It highlights your agency.
Exactly.
But here's the kicker, and the source emphasizes this. The people in the text didn't necessarily commit an act of crime. They aren't confessing to murder or theft.
No.
They are confessing to inaction.
This is a profound philosophical point. We tend to think that doing nothing is neutral. That if I just sit here and don't make a decision, I'm safe. I'm keeping my hands clean. I'm just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But the source argues that inaction is an active choice with consequences.
They use the doctor analogy, which I thought was brilliant.
It's the best way to visualize it. Imagine a doctor who sees a patient with clear symptoms. The patient is coughing, feverish, showing signs of infection. But the doctor decides to do nothing.
Nothing.
No tests, no treatment, no prescription. He just ignores it, hoping it goes away. He sits in his chair.
And the patient dies.
Now, did the doctor take a knife and kill the patient? No. Did he administer poison? No, he didn't do anything. But his omission, his failure to investigate and treat, led to the exact same result as if he had killed him.
So not listening and not thinking is the intellectual equivalent of that negligent doctor.
Exactly. The subjects in the text, their crime, if you want to call it that, was the omission of listening and thinking. They had the opportunity to learn. They had the opportunity to analyze the warnings.
They just chose not to.
They chose not to. And that choice led to their ruin.
It really challenges the idea that ignorance is bliss, or that ignorance is a valid excuse.
Right. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. If the data is available and you have the CPU to process it, claiming I didn't know is just an admission that you didn't look.
You turned off the machine.
You turned it off.
So let's bring this down from the philosophical clouds and land it in our daily lives. Because the source makes a point to say this isn't just about the afterlife or theology. This applies to relationships, money, everything.
The application to relationships is particularly stinging. Think about how many relationships end because of this exact failure mechanism.
The classic, I didn't know you were unhappy scenario.
Exactly. A partner or a friend voices a grievance. Maybe they say, hey, I feel really ignored when you do this, or I'm struggling with how much you work. Now, you hear it passively. The sound waves hit your ear. But do you process it?
Usually no. You think, oh, they're just venting, they're just in a bad mood, it'll blow over. You dismiss it.
You treat it as noise, not signal. You don't use your intellect to weigh the gravity of that statement. You don't simulate the future consequences. You don't say, if I ignore this, where is our relationship in 6 months?
And then, 6 months later, they leave. They serve the divorce papers, the relationship falls apart. And what is the regret?
If only I had listened when they tried to tell me. The warning signs were there. The input was there. The processing was absent. You were sleepwalking through the relationship. You assumed that doing nothing, not reacting, was safe. But it was the inaction that killed it.
It's the same with finances, right? The source mentions investing.
Yes, this is the classic FOMO investor. You see everyone buying a certain crypto or a meme stock. That's input. You buy it because everyone else is. That's acting without processing.
You didn't read the white paper. You didn't look at the financials. You didn't ask, does this business model make sense?
You didn't use your intellect. You bypassed the CPU. And when the bubble bursts and you lose your savings, you cannot claim I was tricked.
Right.
Well, you can, but it won't get your money back. If the opportunity to learn to listen and think was there and you skipped it, the result is on you.
It seems like the overarching theme here is what the source calls conscious living.
That's the positive spin on all of this. It's easy to read this text as just a warning of punishment or doom, but the inverse is a roadmap for success. It's a guide for living a conscious life. It encourages us to deeply engage with information, with people, with warnings, to stop sleepwalking through our choices.
I like that image. Stop sleepwalking, because when you're sleepwalking, you're hearing but not listening. You're moving but not thinking. You are on autopilot.
And when you wake up, you're left with the mess you made while you were asleep. The goal is to wake up before the disaster, to switch from passive reception to active processing, to turn the CPU on.
So, if we look at the big picture here, we've got three main pillars to take away from this analysis.
Right. Let's recap. First is the mechanism of wisdom. Input plus process. You must not just hear, you must analyze. One without the other is useless.
You need the keyboard and the CPU.
Exactly. Don't just collect data. Compute it.
Second is ownership.
Radical personal responsibility. You are the architect of your own outcomes. Blaming circumstances prevents growth. The text highlights a mindset where you strip away the excuses and look at your own capacity to choose. Even if the world is confusing, you have the equipment to figure it out.
And third is the trap of if only.
The psychology of regret. Understanding that regret stems from realizing you had the power to choose differently. That inaction, doing nothing, is a choice. And it's usually the choice that leads to the biggest regrets.
It's really a call to action. It's saying don't wait until you're looking back to start paying attention.
Exactly. Wisdom is predictive. It's about using that processor, that intellect, to run the simulation forward. If I ignore this warning now, what is the likely outcome?
If I don't listen to my partner now, where are we in a year?
Yes. It's engaging the CPU before the system crashes.
That's the perfect analogy.
It is.
You know, the source ends with a reflective exercise that I think is worth leaving our listeners with. It's a bit of a tough one, but I think it's necessary if we want to actually apply this.
It is, but it's valuable.
Yeah.
It's a moment of honesty.
It asks us to look back at a major regret in our lives, something that still stings a little when you think about it at 3 a.m. And ask yourself this question: was the root cause a failure to listen or a failure to think?
Did you miss the input or did you fail to process it? It's a diagnostic tool for your own history. And usually if we're honest with ourselves, it's one of the two. We either didn't pay attention to the warning or we didn't do the work to understand what we were seeing.
That's something I'm definitely going to be chewing on. It's amazing how much depth you can pull from a single sentence when you really stop to. We'll listen to it.
And think about it.
And think about it. Exactly. We hope this deep dive helps you turn up the signal and turn down the noise in your own life.
Thanks for listening.
Catch you on the next deep dive.